Prologue. In the beginning, there was chaos. Close your eyes for a moment, well, not literally, because you're watching a video, but imagine you're drifting in that soft, quiet space right before sleep. The world feels calm. Time slows down. Everything gets a little blurry at the edges. Now, erase everything. Not just people or cities. Not mountains, oceans, or even the tiny crumbs on your kitchen counter. Erase the sun. Erase space. Erase the idea of up and down. Take away light. Take away darkness. Yes, darkness too. Just nothing. That nothing is where the Greek myths begin. Not with a bang. Not with a god snapping fingers. Just chaos. Now, chaos wasn't chaos the way we use the word today. It wasn't loud, messy, or dramatic. It wasn't that pile of clothes you've been pretending you don't see in the corner of your room. Greek chaos simply meant a gap, an empty, silent space. A cosmic blank page. And from this quiet nothingness, strange and powerful things began to appear. No one knows how. They just did. That's the magic of myth. Things don't need instructions. They simply happen. The first being we meet is Gaia, the Earth. Not the planet as we know it, spinning in space. Think of her more like the spirit of the Earth. A warm, steady presence. Solid. Patient. The kind of being who would bake cookies if cosmic beings ate cookies. Then came Tartarus. If Gaia is the comforting earth, Tartarus is the deep, dark pit beneath everything. A gloomy place even the gods avoided. Think of it as the universe's basement, creepy, echoey, and probably full of things you don't want to bump into at night. Next appears Eros, the force of attraction. No, not the cute little winged Cupid version yet. The earliest Eros was more like the energy that pulls things together. Not romantic love, but the cosmic glue that makes stuff want to form. Without Eros, nothing would unite, nothing would grow, nothing would become. And then, Gaia gives rise to Uranus, the sky. He stretches over her, creating the first structure the world has ever known. Earth below, sky above. Finally, a bit of order. A bit of shape. A sense of here and there. Gaia and Uranus become the first divine couple, though let's be honest, they had no competition, and together, they have children. A lot of children. These are the Titans, the first generation of powerful gods. Now, the Titans weren't the tall, muscular supermodels people picture today. They were more like raw forces of nature shaped into personalities. Big, mighty, and a bit terrifying. But also important, because they were the building blocks of the world. There were 12 main Titans. Cronus, the youngest and often the boldest. Rhea, the nurturing one. Oceanus, the endless waters. Hyperion, light and observation. Themis, order and justice. And many more, each with their own power and attitude. As Gaia brought life into the world, the universe became less empty and more alive. Still wild, still strange, but no longer silent. You can almost imagine the early cosmos humming like a big warm engine warming up for the first time. But not everything in this new world was peaceful. Uranus, Father Sky, was not exactly Dad of the Year. He didn't like that his children were powerful. He feared them. And like many mythic parents, he made a terrible mistake. He tried to stop them from growing, imagining, or becoming stronger. He pushed them down, tried to hide them away, and treated them like threats instead of his own family. Gaia, who loved her children deeply, wasn't pleased. She had created life, and she wanted that life to thrive, not be trapped or smothered by the sky she herself had birthed. So Gaia came up with a plan. In the gentle, bedtime voice the myths give her, she spoke to her Titan children. My little ones, Or, well, not so little ones, someone needs to stand up to your father. Now, imagine 12 giant cosmic beings staring at each other like. You gonna do it? No, you do it. I would, but I left my courage at home. Finally, the youngest Titan, Cronus, stepped forward. He wasn't the biggest or the kindest, but he was brave, and also ambitious. Very ambitious. The type who hears, "You can't do this," and immediately responds, "Watch me." Gaia gave Cronus a special celestial tool, the first weapon in mythic history, and Cronus confronted Uranus. A struggle followed, and when it was over, Cronus became ruler of the cosmos. This was the first great shift in power. But here's the thing about prophecy, fear, and ambition: they pass down through generations like family recipes nobody really wants. Just as Uranus feared his children, Cronus would soon fear his children. And just like his father, he would make choices that echoed through time. The stage was set. A new generation of gods would rise. Some would rule. Some would rebel. Some would shape the world. Some would break it. And all of them would leave stories behind, big stories, loud stories, funny stories, tragic stories. But right now, in our quiet beginning, we simply sit with chaos, Gaia, Uranus, and the Titans. We watch the cosmos stretch and grow. We feel the first sparks of drama slowly warming up, like the opening notes of a long cosmic symphony. And as the chapter closes, we sense something in the air, a whisper, a warning, a feeling that someone new will soon appear. Someone powerful. Someone bold. Someone who will rise from secrecy to challenge the Titans themselves. But that is a story for another chapter. For now, drift into the early twilight of the universe, where the sky first stretched over the earth, where the Titans took their first steps, and where chaos slowly began to fill with life, messy, beautiful, unpredictable life. The story of the Greek gods has just begun. The reign of the Titans. So, when we last left the story, Cronus had basically pulled off one of the biggest cosmic coups in history. He overthrew his father, Uranus, took the throne, dusted off his hands, and said, "All right, everyone, I'm in charge now." And for a while, things actually went pretty well. Cronus became the chief Titan. Ruler of everything. King of the cosmos. If the universe had a business card, his name would be in bold letters. Under his rule, the world settled into something that almost looked peaceful. The seas rolled, the mountains stood tall, the earth grew green, and the sky stayed, well, skyish. Cronus was powerful. Strong. Confident. But also, let's be honest, a little paranoid. The kind of leader who pretends he's chill but sleeps with one eye open. But before we get to the paranoia part, there's Rhea. Rhea was one of the Titan sisters, wise, gentle, steady. If Cronus was the storm, Rhea was the calm morning after. She and Cronus got married, and for a moment, they looked like they could be the cosmic power couple of the age. Together, they started a family. And you'd think, oh, that's sweet, a happy Titan home, little giant babies, family dinners where everyone passes around glowing celestial fruit, but no. This is Greek mythology. Families do not get to be peaceful for long. Because there was a prophecy. And in the world of myth, prophecies are basically cosmic spoilers. The moment one appears, you know drama is coming. This prophecy said, one of Cronus's children will overthrow him, just like he overthrew his father. Cronus did not love this information. In fact, it ruined the whole vibe for him. Every time Rhea had a baby, Cronus didn't see a sweet child. He saw a tiny threat with chubby cheeks and the potential to take his throne. So he made a decision, one that was dramatic, extreme, and honestly pretty weird. He swallowed them. Yep. Whole. Like vitamins. No chewing, no warning, no gentle, "Hey, sorry about this, kid." Just gulp. Gone. Now, before we move on, let's take a moment to imagine this from Rhea's point of view. You have a baby. A beautiful, glowing, divine baby. You hold the baby. You love the baby. You hand the baby to your husband, maybe thinking he'll at least pretend to be fatherly. Then he eats it. At some point, Rhea must have said, "Okay, enough is enough. I am not doing this 6 more times. I am tired." Cronus swallowed their first child, Hestia. Gulp. He swallowed the second child, Demeter. Gulp. Third child, Hera. Gulp. Fourth, Hades. Gulp. Fifth, Poseidon. Gulp. And each time, Rhea grew more miserable. Her children existed, but trapped inside Cronus. They were alive, immortal beings don't die, but they couldn't grow, couldn't move, couldn't do anything except wait. Cronus thought he had solved the prophecy problem. In his mind, he was simply playing it safe. To everyone watching, though, he looked like the world's worst dad and the universe's most stressed-out king. But when Rhea became pregnant again, she realized she couldn't let this one be swallowed too. She had lost 5 children already. She was done losing. So she made a plan. When the time came to give birth, she didn't stay near Cronus. She traveled far away, to a hidden place, a quiet place, a place where Cronus wouldn't think to look. In some versions, she hides in Crete. In others, in a secret cave watched over by divine spirits. Either way, the idea is the same. Zeus, her 6th child, is born in secret, far from Cronus's hungry jaw. Now here comes the funny part. Rhea returns to Cronus, carrying something swaddled in cloth. Cronus probably glanced at it and thought, "Ah, yes, my next threat, child." But inside the blankets, was not Zeus. It was a rock. A literal rock. Rhea had wrapped a large stone like a baby, handed it to Cronus, and said absolutely nothing. And Cronus, too paranoid to double-check and honestly too proud to admit he might be wrong, swallowed it. He swallowed a rock. No questions asked. Imagine the silence after that. Rhea standing there like, "Yep. Totally a baby." Cronus nodding like, "Good job, me." And the rock, now in Cronus's stomach, probably thinking, "How did I get here?" Meanwhile, baby Zeus, the real baby, was safe. And this is where the story shifts into secret childhood territory. Zeus didn't grow up in a palace. He didn't grow up surrounded by his siblings. He grew up hidden, raised quietly, away from his father's eyes. Some versions say he was raised in a cave on Mount Ida in Crete, cared for by nymphs, magical caretakers who fed him goat's milk and honey. And yes, the goat had a name, Amalthea. A legendary goat, by the way. A goat so good her horn became the symbol of endless abundance, the cornucopia. Other versions say divine warriors called the Cuorites protected baby Zeus. They would dance around the cave, clashing their shields to drown out his cries so Cronus wouldn't hear him. Basically, the ancient version of "Don't wake the baby," but with swords. Either way, Zeus grew up safely, hidden from Cronus's paranoia. As he got older, he became strong. Smart. Confident. But unlike Cronus, he had something else too, purpose. He knew what Cronus had done. He knew about the swallowed siblings. He knew the prophecy that Cronus feared so much, and he knew the world needed something different, something better. But it wasn't time yet. He had to grow. He had to plan. He had to wait for the right moment. And while Zeus learned, trained, and prepared, Cronus continued ruling as if the universe was his forever. He had no idea that the prophecy he feared so much was still alive and growing on a hidden mountain. No idea that one day, the child he thought he swallowed, but didn't, would come back with thunder in his hands and a plan in his heart. For now, though, the world remained under the rule of the Titans. Cronus sat on his throne. Rhea carried her secret quietly. And the cosmos waited, like the calm breath before a storm. But soon, very soon, the balance of power would shift again. And when it does, the story of the Greek gods will explode into a war that changes everything. But that's for the next chapter. For now, rest with the image of baby Zeus hidden in his cave, watched over by loyal spirits, growing stronger beneath the soft shadows of the mountain. The future is coming. And Cronus won't be ready for it. Birth of the Olympians and the rise of Zeus. So, picture Zeus as a kid growing up on a hidden mountain. Not a regular mountain getaway, but a secret cave tucked deep inside Crete, guarded by nymphs and warriors who made noise on purpose so Cronus wouldn't hear baby cries echoing across the universe. Imagine trying to raise a baby quietly and your solution is: let's bang loud metal shields together. Honestly, Greek mythology never does anything halfway. Zeus grew up fast, because time moves differently for gods, and he didn't grow up soft. This wasn't a life of luxury. No royal crib. No golden toys. No fancy palace room with a mobile hanging from the ceiling. Zeus slept in a stone cave, drank goat milk, and probably learned to dodge falling stalactites before he could walk. He was raised in secret, protected every day, but even as a child he carried something inside him: purpose. A feeling that he wasn't meant to stay hidden forever. As he reached adulthood, Zeus became strong, clever, and, let's be honest, just a bit dramatic. But to be fair, he was born into a dramatic family. One day, he decided enough was enough. His brothers and sisters had been swallowed whole before they even got to blink at the sunlight. Cronus thought he solved all his problems by storing his kids like cosmic snacks. But the prophecy was still alive. And Zeus knew it was time to face the father who had tried so hard to stop fate. Now, there are many versions of how Zeus approached Cronus, but one popular version says Zeus disguised himself as a cupbearer. He served Cronus a drink, except this drink wasn't normal. It was a special mixture made by Metis, a wise goddess who knew a thing or two about clever tricks. Cronus drank it. And let's just say, his stomach did not approve. Soon, Cronus began to gag, cough, choke, and then he started spitting things out. Not words. Not complaints. Children. Fully grown, immortal children. One by one, out came Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Imagine being swallowed for years and suddenly getting thrown back into the world like, huh? Is it over? Did I miss anything? It must have been the most chaotic family reunion ever. But the important thing is, they were free. For the first time since their births, all 6 siblings stood together. The Olympian children of Cronus were finally united. And even though they had basically just been spit out, which is not the grand entrance anyone dreams of, they were ready to change the world. Now that Cronus's belly was empty and his children were standing in front of him, the prophecy became very real. This wasn't just Zeus anymore. This was a whole team. But before they could challenge the Titans, they needed more help. Zeus knew that strength alone wouldn't win the coming war. The older generation of gods still held great power, and Cronus wasn't alone, he had the Titans behind him. So Zeus did something bold. He reached out to 2 ancient groups that Cronus had locked away long ago, deep in the shadows of Tartarus. The Cyclopes and the Centimanes. Now, these were not gentle neighbors you ask to borrow sugar. The Cyclopes were giant beings with one enormous eye. The Centimanes were even more intense, massive creatures with 100 hands each. They were terrifying and powerful, the kind of allies you want on your side in a cosmic war. Cronus had imprisoned them because he feared their power. Which, if we're being honest, seems to be his whole personality. Fear children. Eat children. Fear giant creatures. Imprison giant creatures. Repeat. Zeus, however, didn't see them as threats. He saw potential allies who had every reason to fight against the Titans. He freed them from their chains, and instantly the balance of power shifted. And the Cyclopes, thankful for their freedom, decided to give Zeus and his siblings gifts, very powerful gifts. To Zeus, they gave thunderbolts. Not cute thunderbolts, not little sparks, but full, sky-shaking, lightning-splitting bolts of raw energy. Weapons made from the power of storms themselves. To Poseidon, they handed the trident, a three-pronged weapon that could shake the seas, stir storms, and crack the earth. To Hades, they gifted the helm of darkness, a helmet that could make him invisible and fill enemies with cold fear. These weren't just weapons. They were symbols of what each brother would eventually rule. Thunder. Sea. The unseen world. With allies beside them and new weapons in their hands, the Olympians started to gather strength. Imagine them standing on a mountain ridge together, Zeus with lightning dancing around his fingers, Poseidon gripping his trident as waves crash far below, Hades wearing the helm as shadows curl around him. Behind them stood their sisters, wise and powerful in their own right, and the freed Cyclopes and Centimanes ready to fight. This wasn't just a family anymore. It was the beginning of an army. And as the wind roared across the mountains, carrying the scent of storm and change, the world knew something was coming. A conflict bigger than anything before. A clash that would decide the fate of gods, titans, and all creation. The Titans had ruled for ages. Cronus had sat on the throne believing he had beaten the prophecy. But now the prophecy stood in front of him, 6 children, grown and determined, and the ancient forces he had locked away. For the first time, Cronus felt real fear. The kind of fear that whispers, "Your time is almost up." Still, the Titans were strong. They had size, age, and experience. The Olympians had youth, hunger, and those shiny new weapons. The battlefield was shifting, piece by piece. Both sides prepared. Titans gathered on the high cliffs and deep valleys. Olympians trained on hidden mountains with their strange new allies. The ground itself seemed to tense, waiting for the first strike. This wasn't a simple family argument anymore. This was the beginning of a war that would shape the future of gods and mortals. But that war, Titanomachy, belongs to the next chapter. For now, picture Zeus standing tall, lightning humming softly in his hands. His siblings stand beside him, no longer swallowed or hidden but ready. The Cyclopes rumble with power. The Centimanes flex their 100 hands, eager for battle. The Olympians have been born. The rise of Zeus has begun. And the cosmos is about to shake. The war for the cosmos. If you've been following this bedtime history ride, you already know things have been heating up. Zeus is grown now, his siblings are finally free, and the Titan family reunion is about to turn into the biggest cosmic brawl in ancient storytelling. So, get comfy, maybe grab a blanket, and let's step into Chapter 4, Titanomachy, the War for the Cosmos. Now, Titanomachy sounds like the kind of word your tongue gives up on halfway through, but it simply means the Titan War. And this wasn't just any war, this was a 10-year, universe-shaking showdown between 2 generations of gods. Picture lightning storms, mountains flying, oceans boiling, and giant beings screaming battle cries that echo across the world. Not the kind of lullaby material, I know, but hey, Greek myths never do things halfway. So let's rewind just a little. Zeus has freed his siblings from Cronus's stomach buffet. He's also freed the Cyclopes and the Centimanes from their very long and very unjust timeout in Tartarus. And now, with all the most powerful creatures on his side, Zeus is ready to challenge the Titans, his uncles and his father, for control of the universe. The Titans, led by Cronus, are not amused. They're older, stronger, and honestly kind of irritated because they thought their rule was secure. Cronus, especially, is feeling that special mix of stress and denial. You know that look a parent gets when they realize their kid is finally taller than them? Multiply that by 10 and add thunderbolts. That was Cronus right now. When the war starts, it isn't some quick 2-day argument with dramatic shouting and slamming doors. No, this thing drags on for a whole decade. 10 long years of chaos, storms, quakes, and very loud sounds that would keep any human awake forever. If the world back then had weather alerts, the entire system would have exploded from overuse. Each side fights hard. The Titans tower like mountains, swinging weapons made of stone and sheer force. The younger gods, the Olympians, fight fast and wild, with Zeus hurling lightning that lights up the sky like a cosmic fireworks show. Hera, Demeter, and Hestia hold the lines with steady determination, while Poseidon shakes the earth with his trident and Hades turns shadows into weapons. The war becomes a test of endurance. The Titans are powerful, but Zeus and his siblings have something new: teamwork. And also, shiny new weapons forged by the Cyclopes. And speaking of Cyclopes, they don't just sit on the sidelines, cheering like fans at a sports game. These one-eyed giants forge weapons so strong they basically change the whole direction of the war. Zeus's thunderbolt? That's their work. Poseidon's trident? Also Cyclopes. Hades' helmet of invisibility? Yep. They don't get enough credit, but they're basically the ancient Greek version of that tech team that saves the whole company but never appears in the company photo. But the real game changer? The Centimanes. These three brothers, the 100-handed ones, are exactly what they sound like: enormous beings with 100 arms each and a temper built for war. Zeus frees them from Tartarus and says, "Hey, want to help us overthrow the Titans?" And the Centimanes respond with something like, "We've been locked up since forever, absolutely yes." Once they join the battlefield, everything changes. Their 100 hands grab mountains, actual mountains, and hurl them at the Titans like they're playing the world's most violent game of dodgeball. And let's be honest, if someone is throwing a mountain at you, that's probably the moment you rethink all your life choices. As the war reaches its final stages, the universe shakes non-stop. Rivers burst from their beds, winds roar like wild beasts, and even Gaia, Mother Earth, feels exhausted from all the drama. Imagine 10 years of thunder, earthquakes, lava, storms, and magical explosions. Even the stars probably needed earplugs. But at the end of it all, the Titans begin to fall. One by one, they're overwhelmed by the combined strength of the Olympians and their powerful allies. Cronus fights hard, he really does, but he can't stop Zeus, who's fighting not only with power, but with a fierce sense of justice and a stubborn desire to end the fear that Cronus always spread. Finally, Zeus strikes the last blow. Cronus is defeated. The younger gods stand victorious. But ancient Greek myths are never content with a simple, "and they walked away." There must be consequences. The defeated Titans are chained and thrown deep into Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld, where the Centimanes are appointed as guards. It's poetic, really. The ones who were locked away unfairly are now the jailers. A full-circle moment, Greek myth style. Not every Titan is punished, though. Some, like Oceanus, who didn't join the fight, remain free. Mythology loves a nuanced cast. With the war over, the universe finally gets a chance to calm down. The storms fade. The earth stops shaking. The seas settle into something like peace. And now comes the big moment, dividing the cosmos. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades draw lots, basically like picking straws, because gods apparently love fairness when it's convenient. Zeus wins the sky, becoming the king of thunder, clouds, and everything above. Poseidon gets the sea, which fits his stormy, powerful personality. And Hades, quiet and stern, takes the underworld. Not as punishment, but as his rightful domain. This division marks the start of something new, the rule of the Olympians. With victory behind them, they rise to their new home, Mount Olympus. And let me be clear, Olympus isn't just a mountain. It's a shining palace above the clouds, a place of feasts, long debates, wild arguments, and gods behaving, well, not always like gods. But it becomes the center of their power. The throne room of the cosmos. The place where stories about love, chaos, jealousy, bravery, and divine mistakes will unfold for centuries. And that is the end of the Titanomachy. A 10-year war that shaped the Greek world, crowned a new generation, and set the stage for all the myths we know today. So breathe out. The chaos has calmed, for now. The Olympians are seated. The universe has a new order. But trust me, the drama is far from over. The new order, Olympian life and hierarchy. The war is over, the dust has finally settled, and the Titans are locked away where they can't throw mountains at anyone anymore. Now the world has a new ruling family, the Olympians. So in this chapter, let's take a calm walk up Mount Olympus, peek into their shiny new home, and meet the gods who will shape almost every myth that comes after. Think of this chapter as the meet the cast moment, but with divine drama and glowing thunderbolts. We start with 12 major Olympian gods. Well, sort of 12. The list changes depending on who's telling the story, but we'll go with the ones most people know. First, of course, is Zeus. King of the sky, ruler of storms, and professional thunderbolt thrower. Zeus is the boss now, not because he's the calmest or the wisest, but because he's stubborn, strong, and has a lightning strike with perfect aim. His symbol? The thunderbolt. His personality? Big energy, big charm, and sometimes, big trouble. Next up is Hera, Zeus's wife and queen of the gods. She rules over marriage and family. Hera is smart, proud, and not afraid to call Zeus out when he's acting like he runs the universe alone. Her symbols include the peacock, the cow, and sometimes the crown she wears with serious authority. She is the definition of, please don't try me. Then we have Poseidon, Zeus's brother. While Zeus rules the sky, Poseidon rules the seas, every ocean wave, storm, and underwater cave. His symbol is the trident, a three-pointed spear that can stir storms or calm waters. His personality is powerful, moody, and dramatic, kind of like the ocean itself. If Zeus and Poseidon ever argued, the weather across Greece could tell you who won. Demeter, another of the siblings, is the goddess of harvest, grain, and all things that grow. She's patient, gentle, and deeply connected to the earth. Without her, everyone would be hungry. Her symbols are wheat, corn, and the sickle. She's basically ancient Greece's version of, please water your plants or doom the world. Now, let's meet the younger Olympians, the next generation. Athena is the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and crafts. She's the type who wins arguments with logic, not fire. Her symbol is the owl, because nothing says, I see everything, like a bird with giant eyes. Athena often gives kings advice, helps heroes, and invents useful things. She's sharp, steady, and impossible to fool. Apollo, the golden boy, literally, rules over music, poetry, healing, and sunlight. He's talented in almost everything, the kind of student teachers love. His symbols include the lyre, the bow, and the laurel wreath. He also gives prophecies through his oracle at Delphi, which makes him the ancient version of a life coach with supernatural accuracy. Right next to Apollo is his twin sister Artemis, goddess of the wild, the hunt, and young maidens. She loves forests, moonlight, and peace. Her symbol is the bow and arrow. Artemis has a "don't mess with my space" vibe. If forests had security systems, it would be her. Then comes Ares, the god of war. Not strategy, not planning, just raw, loud, messy, all-out war. His symbol is the spear and the shield. Ares is fierce and bold but not always smart about it. He charges forward first and thinks later. If wars were arguments, Ares would be the one yelling before hearing the question. Next, we have Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, love, and desire. She doesn't need a weapon, her charm is more dangerous than any sword. Her symbols include roses, doves, and seashells. She can start fights just by walking into a room, sometimes without even trying. Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge, is the Olympian's blacksmith. He builds tools, weapons, palaces, and even robots. Yes, robots. He once made golden handmaidens. His symbols include the hammer and anvil. He's calm, creative, and one of the few gods who prefers work over drama. Hermes is the messenger god, speedy, clever, and always in motion. He rules travel, roads, trade, and communication. His symbols include the winged sandals and the caduceus staff. Hermes can talk his way out of anything and into anywhere. If the gods had group chats, Hermes would manage all of them. Finally, depending on the version you hear, the 12th Olympian is either Hestia or Dionysus. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, home, and domestic peace. She keeps things calm, cooks the meals, guards the fire, and avoids arguments. Her symbol is the hearth flame. She's the quiet glue that holds everyone together. Dionysus, on the other hand, is the god of wine, theater, celebration, and emotional chaos. His symbols include grapes, vines, and cups of wine. He brings joy but also wildness. Wherever Dionysus goes, there is music, dancing, laughing, and often questionable decisions. Now that we've met the major Olympians, let's talk about the vibe on Olympus. Picture a shining palace above the clouds, full of gods who are basically one big extended family. Some love each other, some tolerate each other, and some are only one argument away from throwing lightning across the room. Zeus holds the most power. Hera shares authority but often checks him. Poseidon respects Zeus but also keeps his own kingdom running. Hades mostly stays in the underworld, which keeps him out of daily fights. The younger gods pick sides depending on the day. Athena often supports Zeus's decisions. Ares doesn't care about politics unless war is involved. Apollo and Artemis keep a little distance, watching everything with quiet judgment. Hermes runs around delivering messages and calming arguments before they turn into disasters. And of course, there are minor gods too, and they're just as important. The Muses, 9 sisters of creativity, inspire music, art, and storytelling. They're like the spiritual Wi-Fi connection for every poet and musician. The Fates, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Spin, measure, and cut the thread of every life. Even Zeus doesn't argue with them because they don't negotiate. Ever. There's Nike, the goddess of victory, always ready to cheer winners and support heroes. And countless more, gods of rivers, mountains, breezes, dawn, sleep, dreams, and every tiny part of existence. Together, all these gods create the new order of the universe. They watch over humans, guide heroes, argue, fall in love, fight, forgive, and write the stories that have lived for thousands of years. Mount Olympus isn't just a home, it's the heartbeat of Greek mythology, full of light, laughter, storms, and stories waiting to unfold. Prometheus, the gift of fire, and the trick at Mycone. Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most famous Greek myths ever told, the story of Prometheus. It's a tale about cleverness, fire, rebellion, gods with long grudges, and one titan who cared way too much about humans for his own safety. So get comfy, settle in, and let's begin chapter 6. First, who is Prometheus? He's a titan, but not like the others we saw fighting Zeus in the big Titan War. Prometheus is different, calmer, smarter, and way more patient. His name basically means forethought, as in, he thinks before he acts. If only more characters in Greek myths did that. Prometheus is known for loving humans, protecting them, and trying his best to give them a fighting chance in a world ruled by powerful gods. Humans at this stage are new, weak, confused, and honestly struggling. They don't have fire, they barely know how to cook, and their idea of warm clothing is, well, there is none. So Prometheus sees them shivering and stumbling around and thinks, yeah, this is not going to work. But before we get to the fire part, we have to talk about the trick at Mycone, one of the most iconic pranks in mythology. The scene takes place during a great feast where humans and gods come together. They're trying to decide how sacrifices should be done, which parts the gods get, and which parts humans can keep. Prometheus, always the human fanboy, decides to help the humans come out on top. He takes an ox and divides it into two piles. One pile is all the good meat, but he hides it under some messy, ugly scraps. The second pile is basically bones wrapped in shiny fat that looks great on the outside but is useless. Prometheus brings the two piles to Zeus and says, "Pick whichever offering you want." Zeus, who is powerful but not always suspicious enough, grabs the shiny bone pile. He thinks he's picking the good stuff, but nope, he just chose the ancient Greek version of a beautifully wrapped empty gift box. When Zeus realizes he's been tricked, he's not happy. Actually, he's furious. Like thunderclouds gathering, lightning fingers twitching furious. And because all Greek gods love dramatic payback, Zeus decides he will punish humans for this trick. His plan? Take away fire. Without fire, humans can't cook, can't stay warm, can't protect themselves, and definitely can't develop as a civilization. This is a huge blow. Life suddenly becomes cold and hard again. Prometheus watches all this unfold and thinks, you know what? No. Not on my watch. So he makes a dangerous decision. A decision that will flip the entire balance between gods and humans forever. He climbs up to Olympus, sneaking into the gods' territory like he's in some divine spy movie, and steals fire. Not just fire as in flames, but fire as in knowledge, warmth, technology, hope. Prometheus hides the fire inside a stalk of fennel, because, of course, fennel was the ancient world's USB stick, and brings it down to humans. The moment humans get fire, everything changes. They cook their food. They build tools. They shape metal. They light up the night. Their minds open. And suddenly, humans stop being helpless little creatures and start becoming creators. Prometheus is proud. Humans cheer. Civilization begins. Zeus, however. Yeah, Zeus is somewhere between offended, betrayed, and ready to punish someone forever. He doesn't see fire as a simple gift, he sees it as a challenge to divine power. Humans now have something that could make them almost godlike, and he does not like that. So Zeus decides that Prometheus must pay. And the punishment he chooses is so dramatic that it basically defines Greek mythology's idea of eternal suffering. Prometheus is chained to a lonely mountain, some myths say the Caucasus, others simply call it a far, remote rock where no one hears your complaints. The chains are unbreakable, forged by Hephaestus himself. Prometheus can't move, escape, or even sleep comfortably. And then comes the worst part. Every single day, an eagle, Zeus's personal bird, swoops down and eats Prometheus's liver. Yes, his liver. Why the liver? Because the Greeks believed the liver grew back every night. So Prometheus can't die. He can't escape. He suffers, heals, and suffers again, forever. It's not exactly a cute bedtime detail, but it's one of the most powerful images in all mythology. Now, why such a harsh punishment? Because this myth isn't just a story about fire. It's a story about boundaries, the line between gods and humans. Zeus believes there needs to be order, distance, respect. Humans should stay human. And Prometheus, well, he disagreed. Prometheus is a rebel, but he's a rebel with compassion. The fire represents more than heat, it stands for knowledge, growth, and the human ability to shape the world. Zeus's punishment represents the cost of challenging divine authority. And Prometheus's suffering shows that even doing the right thing can come with a heavy price. But this myth also shows something deeper about ancient Greek thinking. The gods were powerful, but they weren't always wise or kind. Humans struggled, suffered, worked, and still reached for something higher. Prometheus gave them that chance. The Greeks understood that knowledge always comes with danger. Fire warms your home, but it also burns. Knowledge builds cities, but it also creates conflict. Every great gift carries a shadow. Prometheus's story reminds us that humanity grows because someone, somewhere, dares to take a risk. And even though Prometheus is chained, he becomes a symbol of resistance, courage, and love for humankind. His suffering is great, but his legacy is greater. Later myths will free him, but for now, he sits on that lonely mountain, still refusing to regret his choice. So tonight, let this story glow like a small flame in the dark, the story of a titan who believed in us. Pandora and the origin of suffering. Tonight's story takes us from fire and rebellion straight into one of the oldest origin stories, about why humans suffer. And strangely enough, that story starts with a woman named Pandora, a jar full of mysterious things, and a level of curiosity that changed the world forever. But before we meet Pandora, we need to understand why she was created in the first place. Remember in the last chapter when Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans? Zeus did not forget. He did not forgive. Zeus holds grudges like their trophies. Prometheus was already chained to a mountain with an eagle snacking on his liver every day, but Zeus wasn't done. That punishment was for Prometheus. Now Zeus wanted something extra. Something that would punish humans too, the very people Prometheus tried to help. So Zeus gathers the Olympian gods and says something like, "All right, team. They want gifts? Let's give them a gift they won't forget." And the gods, being the gods, come up with a plan that is both creative and a tiny bit evil. That plan is Pandora. Now, Pandora is not created to be cruel. In fact, she is created to be beautiful, charming, sweet, and completely irresistible. The gods work together like artists on a masterpiece. Hephaestus shapes her body from clay. Athena gives her grace and the ability to learn crafts. Aphrodite gives her beauty so bright it can turn heads instantly. Hermes gives her a curious mind and a playful spark, which, honestly, will cause all the trouble later. And Zeus? Well, Zeus gives her a gift too. He gives her a dangerous sense of curiosity and the destiny that comes with it. Her name, Pandora, means all gifted, because she receives something from every god. She is the first woman in human form. A living blessing. Or depending on how you see the story, a divine trap wrapped in beauty. When Pandora is ready, the gods send her down to earth. And along with her, they send something else, a container. Most people call it Pandora's box, but in the original myth, it's actually a jar. A big, sealed jar. Let's call it a jar so we stay true to the story. This jar isn't normal. It holds things inside that no human has ever seen. And here's the best part, Pandora is told not to open it. Which, let's be honest, never works on anyone in any myth ever. Pandora is welcomed by Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother. And even though Prometheus warned him, "Do not accept any gifts from Zeus," Epimetheus looks at Pandora and forgets every warning he ever heard. He falls in love instantly and brings her into his home. At first, everything is peaceful. Pandora is kind and curious about everything in the world. She learns quickly. She enjoys life among humans. But that jar, that mysterious, sealed jar, calls to her. It sits in the corner like a quiet secret. Pandora doesn't know what's inside. She's told not to touch it. But every day, her curiosity pokes at her. "Just take a peek," it whispers. Just one little peek. And Pandora, being human in the most human way possible, finally gives in. One day, when Epimetheus is away, she walks over to the jar, touches the lid, and gently lifts it. And that's when everything changes. The moment the jar opens, a swirl of dark shapes rushes out like smoke breaking free. They fly into the world, fast and wild. Pandora tries to slam the lid shut, but it's too late. The contents of the jar have already escaped. Inside that jar were all the evils, the troubles that would soon affect every human life. Sickness, aging, pain, jealousy, greed, anger, despair, lies, fear, hunger, and everything else that makes life difficult. They spill into the world, sinking into human hearts, whispering into human minds, spreading across the lands like invisible shadows. Pandora can only watch in horror. In that moment, she realizes what she has done. But here's the thing, the jar is not empty. When Pandora finally slams the lid down, one last thing remains inside. One soft, glowing, quiet thing. Hope. Hope stays in the jar, trapped behind the lid. Different versions of the myth say different things about this moment, but one thing is clear, hope does not escape with the other troubles. Pandora, shaking and scared, slowly opens the jar again, but this time, she lets just a little of that hope drift out into the world. Hope becomes the one thing humans have to balance all the suffering released earlier. It becomes the light in the darkness, the strength during hard times, the reason people keep going even when life gets tough. This whole myth is not just a story about one woman opening a jar. It's a story about the human condition, why life is hard, why we struggle, and why we continue moving forward anyway. Pandora is not a villain. She isn't evil, and she isn't stupid. She is curious. She is human. Her actions reflect something deeply true about all of us. When we are told, "Don't look," we look. When we're told, "Don't touch," we touch. Curiosity is part of what defines us. But the myth also teaches that with curiosity comes responsibility, and with knowledge comes consequence. Humans gained fire from Prometheus, a gift of power and skill, but then they received suffering through Pandora. It's like the universe balancing itself out. And yet, the myth is not entirely sad. Because hope remains. Hope survives. Hope enters the world as a quiet promise that no matter how many troubles come our way, something inside us keeps fighting, keeps believing, keeps rising. Ancient Greeks believed life would always have pain and struggle, but they also believed suffering was never the end of the story. Hope is the last thing in the jar for a reason. It doesn't replace the hard things, but it makes them bearable. So tonight, as you drift off, think of Pandora not as the bringer of misery but as the beginning of a truth humans have always known. Life is a mix of shadow and light. And even when the shadows escape, hope stays close. The Queen of Olympus, Hera, marriage, jealousy, and power. So, tonight we're stepping into the world of Hera, Queen of the Gods, wife of Zeus, and honestly, one of the most complicated characters in all of Greek myth. If Olympus had a Most Misunderstood Goddess award, Hera might take it home every single year. People love to focus on her anger, her jealousy, the whole punishing Zeus's side kids thing, but there's more to her than being the mythic version of "I need to speak to your manager." Let's start from the beginning. Hera is one of the original Olympians, sister and later wife of Zeus. She's the goddess of marriage, of family, of childbirth, and basically anything that has to do with keeping the home together. Not exactly the role you want if your husband is Zeus, a guy who treats promises the same way people treat New Year's resolutions, with enthusiasm at first, and then, well, you know. But even with all that chaos around her, Hera is powerful. Not just powerful like, "I can turn you into a cow if I feel like it," which she can. But powerful as in, people prayed to her for protection, cities built temples for her, and myths respected her as the force that kept the divine family from falling apart entirely. She wasn't some side character. She was the queen. Still, her story is tangled with Zeus's behavior. And look, Zeus had many, let's call them, adventures. And what usually happened after Zeus's adventures? Yup. Hera found out. And when Hera found out, things did not go well for anyone involved. If you were the woman Zeus fell for, or worse, the kid born from that romance, you better start running, hiding, or turning into a plant. Because Hera did not play. But before we jump into those stories, let's talk about Hera herself. She wasn't born angry, and she wasn't only about revenge. Hera had her own dignity and her own sense of order. She wanted loyalty, stability, and respect, which honestly is fair. She was the goddess of marriage. She believed in the rules. And the person breaking those rules the most was her own husband. That tension is what created so many stories. But alright, let's get into one of the biggest examples of Hera's wrath, a myth that pretty much sums up her sadness, power, and frustration all at once, the story of Heracles. You might know him by his Roman name, Hercules. Big hero, super strength, fights monsters like he's checking items off a grocery list. But most people don't realize this. Heracles' entire life became painful because of Hera. Why? Well, Heracles was Zeus's child with another woman, Alcmene. And when Hera heard about that, she was furious. Not just because Zeus cheated again, but because Heracles symbolized everything she had to deal with, her husband's disloyalty, the lack of respect, and the way Zeus kept forcing her into the role of angry wife. So when Heracles was born, Hera made sure he wouldn't have an easy life. You might have heard the story of baby Heracles strangling 2 snakes in his cradle. Cute, yes, but also dark, because those snakes were sent by Hera. Imagine being a newborn and already fighting for your life. Most babies are dealing with soft blankets and rattles. Heracles gets venomous serpents. Classic Greek myth moment. When Heracles grew older, Hera hit him again, this time with madness. She clouded his mind so badly that he couldn't tell friend from foe, and the tragedy that followed became the reason he had to perform the famous 12 labors. Those tasks were basically impossible missions designed to break him. And even though he succeeded, the whole journey was shaped by Hera's anger. But here's the thing, Hera wasn't just a villain in Heracles' story. In a weird twist, she also helped him become the great hero he's remembered as. Without those trials, without the suffering, without the long path to redemption, Heracles might have been just another strong guy. Hera unintentionally forged his legend. And that's the pattern in many myths. Hera's actions often come from pain, not pure evil. She wanted loyalty. She wanted respect. She wanted the world to stick to the rules she represented. And when the rules were broken over and over, mostly by Zeus, she reacted the only way myths knew how, dramatically. Of course, Zeus didn't make things easier. Whenever Zeus fell in love, with a goddess, a mortal woman, or in some stories even with mortals who didn't want his attention, Hera became part of the aftermath. And sometimes, honestly, the women weren't even at fault. Many were tricked, or scared, or just couldn't escape Zeus. And yet Hera's anger would fall on them anyway. It's tragic from every angle. Take Io, for example. She was a mortal priestess. Zeus liked her, and when Hera got suspicious, Zeus turned Io into a cow. Yes, a cow. As if Hera wouldn't notice Zeus standing there with a random cow acting nervous. Hera immediately asked for the cow as a gift, then put a 100-eyed guard on her to make sure Zeus couldn't turn her back. It was like the mythic version of checking someone's phone because you know they're hiding something. Another story, Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. When Hera found out Leto was pregnant with Zeus's children, she basically told all the lands on Earth, "Don't you dare give this woman a place to rest." Imagine being so angry that even islands avoid someone. Leto had to wander until she found a floating island that wasn't considered real land. That's where she gave birth. Harsh, yes. But again, these stories show Hera's desperation to keep order when Zeus constantly broke it. But Hera isn't just anger. She's also strong, wise, and respected in her own right. She had temples older than most Olympian sites. People prayed to her for safe childbirth. She was a protector of women. Not just wives, but anyone seeking stability and honor. She supported heroes sometimes too, like Jason and the Argonauts. In that story, Hera actually helps guide him, giving him protection and advice. This side of her, the guiding queen, often gets ignored. In Olympus politics, Hera was no lightweight either. She challenged Zeus more than once. She even teamed up with Poseidon and Athena in one myth to revolt against Zeus because they were tired of his rule. They tied him up, and the only reason the plan failed is because a quick-thinking sea nymph freed Zeus and warned him. After that, Zeus punished Hera by hanging her from the sky with golden chains until she apologized. Dramatic? Absolutely. But it shows how fierce she was. Through all of this, Hera becomes something deeper than just jealous wife. She becomes a symbol of the messy, painful side of love and loyalty. She shows what happens when the ideal, marriage, unity, trust, keeps getting shattered. She reacts with fury because she represents the very rules Zeus breaks. So when you hear myths calling Hera vengeful, remember the other side, the queen trying to hold things together while her husband behaves like a lightning-powered chaos machine. Hera stands for marriage, yes, but also for dignity, strength, and the determination to protect what matters, even when the world is against you. She's not simple. She's not soft. She's not perfect. She's real, at least in the mythic sense. And that complexity is what makes her one of the most fascinating gods on Olympus. Poseidon, god of the sea, and earthquakes. Tonight, we're diving, literally, into the world of Poseidon, the god who ruled every wave, every coast, and every deep-sea shadow that makes you rethink swimming too far from shore. Poseidon is one of the big three brothers. Zeus rules the sky, Hades rules the underworld, and Poseidon gets the entire ocean. Not a bad deal, honestly. Saltwater everywhere, dolphins, ships, storms, and enough moodiness to match the weather. Poseidon wasn't just the sea guy. He was the complete package, god of the sea, god of earthquakes, and god of horses. That's right, horses. Why? No one knows for sure. Maybe he just liked fast transportation. Maybe he saw a wave one day and thought, yeah, that should have hooves. Greek myths don't always explain themselves, and honestly, that's part of the fun. But let's get one thing straight, Poseidon was powerful. Like, really powerful. When he got angry, the sea didn't just get rough, it went full chaos mode. We're talking whirlpools, storms, giant waves, and sometimes an earthquake for good measure. You didn't want to be the person who annoyed him. He wasn't known for patience. If Zeus was the politician of Olympus and Hades was the quiet one with a dry sense of humor, then Poseidon was the stormy middle child with trust issues. You could always spot Poseidon in art or stories because of his trident, the three-pronged spear that could split rocks, shake mountains, or poke sea monsters when they got out of line. And wherever he went, horses weren't far behind. People even believed he created the first horse, which is kind of wild. Imagine being a sea god and suddenly deciding to invent land animals just because you feel like it. Now, let's talk about his personality, because that's where things get interesting. Poseidon had a temper. Not the small, I'm annoyed, kind of temper. More like the, I'm going to sink your entire fleet because you rolled your eyes at me, type. But here's the twist, he could also be kind and protective. Sailors prayed to him before every journey. They asked him for calm waters, safe winds, and no sea monsters popping up out of nowhere. And sometimes, Poseidon listened. Sometimes. That's what made him so unpredictable, like the sea itself. Calm one minute, storm the next. You never really knew what mood you were dealing with. Now let's look at some of Poseidon's famous myths, because this guy stayed busy. One of his biggest legendary connections is with Theseus, the hero who fought the Minotaur. In many stories, Theseus is actually Poseidon's son. And Poseidon liked him, which, in god terms, means he didn't throw a tidal wave at him every time he made a mistake. Theseus called on Poseidon for help more than once, and the god often backed him up. But things weren't always peaceful. Poseidon had plenty of conflicts too. One of the most famous ones is his feud with Odysseus. And this beef lasted 10 whole years. What started it? Odysseus blinded Poseidon's son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. Sure, Polyphemus was trying to eat Odysseus and his crew, but Poseidon didn't care about the details. All he heard was, "You messed with my kid." And that was enough. Because of this, Poseidon spent years making sure Odysseus's journey home became the worst road trip imaginable. Storms, shipwrecks, sea monsters, you name it, Odysseus faced it. If a problem happened on the ocean, Poseidon was probably behind it. And honestly, he took his time. Revenge wasn't rushed. Poseidon also had a rivalry with Athena. They competed for the city of Athens. Poseidon offered a saltwater spring, Athena offered the olive tree. The people chose the tree, because you can actually use an olive tree for food, oil, shade, practical stuff. Poseidon's spring was salty and not exactly great for drinking. When he lost, he flooded part of the city. Classic Poseidon move. Another known myth is about his relationship with Amphitrite, a sea nymph who became his queen. She didn't want to marry him at first, she ran away when he proposed. Poseidon had to send a dolphin to talk her into it. And it worked. For that, the dolphin got a place in the stars. At least Poseidon knew how to reward good teamwork. But not every story about Poseidon is dramatic or romantic. Some are just chaotic. For example, when he got angry with the city of Troy, he sent a sea monster to attack it. And when he helped build the walls of another city and they didn't pay him, he made sure the land shook until they regretted their decision. If Poseidon worked in construction today, nobody would dare miss a payment. Despite all this chaos, people didn't just fear him, they respected him. A lot. The sea was everything to ancient people, a source of food, trade, travel, danger, and mystery. And Poseidon was all those things in one. Fishermen looked to him for good catches. Sailors begged him for steady waves. Families prayed their loved ones would reach the shore safely. And sometimes, Poseidon delivered that peace. Sometimes the sea was calm, glowing blue, gentle enough for kids to paddle in. That was Poseidon too. That's what makes him such a powerful symbol. He's not only destruction. He's not only protection. He's both. He is life and danger at the same time. The sea feeds you, but it can drown you. It carries ships, but it can swallow them. You can't control it. You can only respect it. That deeper meaning is why Poseidon is so compelling. He represents the huge, unpredictable forces of nature, the kind we can't tame but try to understand. When you look at the ocean, whether calm or wild, you're looking at something ancient and alive. And that's how the Greeks saw Poseidon, a reminder that the world is not always gentle, but it's always powerful. So whenever you hear waves crashing, or feel the ground shake just a little, or see a horse run across a field for no reason at all, maybe that's Poseidon saying hi. Or maybe he's just in one of his moods. Either way, he kept the ancient world on its toes. And with all that, the storms, the gifts, the wild temper, the calm seas, Poseidon stands as one of the most fascinating gods in the Greek world. The ocean was his kingdom, but so was every part of life touched by water and movement. A god of mystery, danger, and beauty, all in one. Demeter, Persephone, and the changing seasons. Tonight we're stepping into one of the most poetic stories in all of Greek myth, the tale of Demeter and Persephone. It's a story about love, loss, bargaining, seasons, and the way the world changes right along with the gods. And honestly, it's one of the few myths that feels soft and warm even when it turns sad, like a well-loved blanket. Let's start with Demeter. She is the goddess of agriculture, grain, and everything that grows from the earth. If you ever enjoyed bread, fruit, vegetables, or even just some good soup, you owe Demeter big time. The Greeks believed she controlled the fertility of the earth, the harvest, the soil, the seasons of growth. She wasn't flashy like Zeus with lightning, or Poseidon with storms. Demeter's power was quiet but essential. Without her, nothing grew. No farms, no food, no life. She also wasn't a chaotic troublemaker. Most of the time, Demeter just wanted to take care of the world and, most importantly, her daughter Persephone. Persephone was the joy of her life, bright, beautiful, full of promise. Even her name makes you think of spring. The two were basically inseparable. If Demeter was the heart of the earth, Persephone was the part that made it bloom. But as we all know, Greek myths love to take peaceful moments and throw in dramatic plot twists. And here comes the big one, the abduction of Persephone. One day, Persephone was out in a meadow picking flowers. Just chilling, minding her business. And then, boom, the ground split open. Out rode Hades, god of the underworld, on his dark chariot. He grabbed Persephone and dragged her down to his realm. No warning, no slow introduction, no, hey, I'd like to get to know your daughter. Just full-on kidnapping. Classic Greek god move. When Demeter realized her daughter was gone, everything in her world cracked. She searched everywhere, mountains, oceans, villages, forests, calling Persephone's name. But Persephone was nowhere. Days passed, then weeks. Demeter was grieving so deeply that she stopped doing her goddess job. Plants died. Fields turned gray. Animals wandered hungry. The world began to starve because Demeter couldn't bear the pain of losing her child. The gods on Olympus started to panic. Humans were dying. Sacrifices stopped coming. Worship faded. Even Zeus thought, okay, this is getting serious. So he tried to figure out what happened. That's when he realized Hades had taken Persephone. And Zeus, who had actually known about the plan and said nothing, had to fix the mess. Typical Zeus behavior. Cause chaos, pretend he didn't, fix it halfway. Demeter refused to return to Olympus until Persephone was brought back. She didn't care about anything. Not the feasts, not the temples, not the other gods. She wanted her daughter, and that was final. So Zeus sent Hermes, the messenger god, down to the underworld to talk to Hades. Hermes is great at this kind of work, he can travel anywhere, he talks fast, and he doesn't mind awkward family drama. When Hermes delivered Zeus's order, Hades sighed but agreed. Kind of. Mostly. Here's the twist, before Hades let Persephone go, he offered her a pomegranate seed. Just one. Persephone ate it, maybe because she was hungry, maybe because she didn't know the rule. But in the underworld, eating the food binds you to that realm. That one little seed changed everything. When Demeter saw Persephone return, she was overjoyed. The earth bloomed again. Grass grew, flowers opened, crops sprang from the soil like they were racing to catch up. But the happiness didn't last long. The gods told Demeter about the seed. Because Persephone had eaten it, she couldn't stay up in the world forever. A deal had to be made. And so the famous agreement was created. Persephone would spend part of the year with Hades in the underworld, and the rest with her mother on earth. Depending on the version of the myth, she stays with Hades for 1/3 or 1/2 of the year. But the emotional cycle is always the same. When Persephone rises from the underworld and returns to Demeter, the world celebrates. The earth warms. Plants grow. Trees bloom. This is spring, when Demeter's joy fills the land. When Persephone stays through the summer, the earth is alive and full. That's the season of strength and comfort. But when the time comes for Persephone to go back to the underworld, Demeter begins to grieve again. The leaves fade. The fields dry. Winter approaches. The earth sleeps, waiting for the return of spring. That's the cycle: life, death, rebirth, all tied to a mother's love and a daughter's journey. The myth is beautiful because it explains something universal: change. The seasons shift, the world grows and rests, and life doesn't stay the same forever. The Greeks didn't see the seasons as just weather. They saw them as stories, emotions, family ties. Winter wasn't just cold, it was Demeter missing her daughter. Spring wasn't just warm, it was a reunion. And the turning of the year wasn't random. It had meaning. There's also a deep message about balance. Persephone is both a goddess of spring and the queen of the underworld. Light and dark. Life and death. Above and below. She belongs to both worlds. And that's why she's one of the most important goddesses in all Greek myth. She shows how opposites can exist in harmony. Demeter, too, carries a powerful symbol. She represents nourishment, care, survival. But she also reminds us how deeply tied human life is to the natural world. Without the earth thriving, people can't thrive. And without respect for those cycles, the world loses its rhythm. Even today, the myth hits home. Sometimes we feel full of life and energy, like the spring. Sometimes we feel quiet and slow, like winter. Sometimes we're growing, sometimes we're resting. And none of those phases last forever. Persephone teaches us that change isn't something to fear. It's just part of the pattern. So in the end, the story of Demeter and Persephone is more than a kidnapping myth or an explanation of weather. It's a tale about love that reaches across worlds, a reminder that even gods grieve, and an image of how nature reflects the emotion of the divine. When the flowers return each year, it's not just biology, it's mythology blooming again. And that's why this myth stayed alive for thousands of years. It touches everything: the soil, the seasons, the heart, the way we understand time itself. It's the story of loss and return. Of winter and spring. Of Demeter and Persephone, walking together again as the earth wakes up around them. Athena, Artemis, and the wisdom of the gods. Tonight we're moving into a chapter filled with brains, bravery, and bowstrings, a chapter ruled by two of the most iconic goddesses in all of Greek mythology, Athena and Artemis. They're different in almost every way, but together they show how wide the idea of female divinity really is in the ancient world. From city wisdom to deep forest wildness, these two run the whole spectrum. Let's start with Athena, because her entrance into the world is basically the most dramatic birth story ever. Forget hospitals or midwives. Athena didn't even bother with being a baby. One day, Zeus had this awful headache. A headache so bad he thought his skull might split open. And in some versions, he literally asked someone, usually Hephaestus, to crack his head open with an axe. Not the best medical plan, but hey, Greek gods are built different. And out popped Athena. Fully grown. Wearing armor. Holding a spear. Probably ready to clock in for work immediately. Imagine being born and instantly having your life together. No crying, no crawling, just, "Hey Dad, I'm here. What's the plan?" It's one of the most famous scenes in mythology, and it sets the tone for who Athena is: sharp, powerful, calm, and always, always prepared. Athena is the goddess of wisdom, war strategy, crafts, weaving, and civilization. She's the reason cities have walls, armies have tactics, and people know how to solve problems without setting something on fire. Where Ares is all about wild, chaotic fighting, Athena is about smart fighting. She's the battle planner. The one making maps, not swinging blindly. She values thought over rage, skill over noise. She's also a patron of crafts, weaving, pottery, building, anything that takes precision and creativity. She believed in human progress, teaching people skills that made cities stronger and life better. If you ever fixed something calmly instead of throwing it out the window, that's Athena energy right there. One of her biggest stories is how she became the patron goddess of Athens. She was competing with Poseidon for the honor, and each had to give the city a gift. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, creating a saltwater spring. Cool, but not super useful. Athena offered the olive tree, food, oil, wood, peace, all in one. The people chose her, and the city took her name. A literal win for wisdom. Now let's switch gears and head into the deep forests, where Artemis rules. Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo, born to Leto. If Athena is the goddess of cities, Artemis is the goddess of the wild, forests, animals, the hunt, the moon, and also chastity. She's the quiet guardian of places untouched by human hands. Artemis is usually imagined with her bow, a pack of nymphs, and a general vibe of, I would like to be left alone, thanks. She's independent. She moves through the wilderness with grace and danger at the same time. To the ancient Greeks, she represented the freedom and mystery of nature, beautiful but not safe. She's also known for being fiercely protective of her own boundaries. Like, extremely protective. Let's talk about two myths that show this side clearly. First, the story of Callisto. Callisto was one of Artemis's followers, a group of maidens who chose to stay pure and free, living alongside the goddess. But Zeus, being Zeus, tricked Callisto and caused her to break that vow. When Artemis discovered Callisto was pregnant, she was heartbroken and angry. In many versions, she transformed Callisto into a bear. It's a sad story, full of pain and misunderstanding, showing how strict Artemis could be with the rules she valued most. Another myth is about Actaeon, a hunter who accidentally saw Artemis bathing in the woods. Now, you'd think he would apologize and run, but Artemis didn't even give him time for a "my bad." She turned him into a stag, and his own hunting dogs chased him down. Brutal, yes, but it shows how serious Artemis was about privacy. You do not invade the goddess of the hunt's alone time. Though Artemis could be harsh, she was also a protector, especially of young girls, animals, and anyone living close to the rhythms of nature. People prayed to her for safe childbirth, protection in the wilderness, and guidance when traveling through lonely places. She had a soft side, but you had to earn it. Now, what's interesting is how different Artemis and Athena are, even though they're both powerful goddesses. Athena is civilization, city walls, classrooms, calm advice, and clean problem-solving. Artemis is wilderness, instinct, freedom, mountains, wild animals, moonlight. Athena sits in the center of a busy city. Artemis walks under pine trees with the wind. Athena helps build societies. Artemis steps outside them. Both of them, in their own ways, reject the roles expected of most goddesses. Neither marries. Neither has children. Neither plays by rules about romance or domestic life. Athena is focused on knowledge and justice. Artemis is focused on independence and purity. They show two different forms of female strength in Greek myth, one through the mind, the other through nature. And while Athena fights with strategy, Artemis fights with instinct. Athena wants people to learn and grow. Artemis wants them to respect the wild. Athena is a builder, Artemis is a guardian. Athena is warm but steady, Artemis is cool but fierce. Yet both inspire a kind of awe. Their stories also remind us that femininity in Greek myth isn't one thing. It's not boxed in. It stretches. It shifts. It covers wisdom, war, wildness, nurture, rage, strength, peace, all depending on the goddess. The myths created space for women to be many things: leaders, creators, hunters, protectors, thinkers. And Athena and Artemis sit at the top of that list, showing two of the strongest ways power can look. Together, they shape the balance between civilization and nature. Athena builds the city. Artemis makes sure people never forget the forests beyond the walls. Athena teaches strategy. Artemis teaches instinct. And in a world full of dramatic gods, lightning bolts, sea storms, jealousy, and wild adventures, these two bring a kind of steady wisdom, different, but equally important. So when you look at the night sky, or walk in a quiet part of nature, or solve a problem calmly instead of panicking, maybe you're feeling a little bit of Athena or Artemis. Wisdom and wildness. Order and freedom. Two sisters in power, shaping the world in their own ways. Apollo, Hermes, and the messengers of the gods. If Olympus had a Most Talented God award, Apollo would probably win it every single year, and honestly, the rest of the gods would just have to deal with it. And if there were a Most Likely to Talk His Way Out of Anything award, Hermes would already have stolen it, engraved his name on it, and put it back before anyone noticed. These two gods, while super different in vibe, often crossed paths in myths, giving us a cool mix of harmony, mischief, and divine problem-solving. Let's start with Apollo, because he would absolutely insist on going first. Apollo, the god who does everything, and does it well. Apollo is the golden boy of Olympus, literally. He shines with that sort of warm, glowing confidence that makes you think he would be great at giving TED Talks if ancient Greece had them. He's the god of prophecy, music, healing, archery, and apparently also poetry, truth, and sometimes the sun, depending on which poet you ask. Basically, if it's impressive, Apollo probably has a hand in it. One of his biggest roles is as the Lord of Prophecy, most famously tied to the Oracle of Delphi. This wasn't just some tiny mystical booth. Delphi was the place people traveled to when they needed big answers. Kings, heroes, farmers, you name it, everyone wanted to hear what Apollo had to say. And he always gave answers in riddles, because giving a clear yes or no would be way too easy. Apollo also loved music. He played the lyre like a pro, and the muses adored him. If you picture him giving a concert on a mountaintop with the wind blowing through his perfect hair, you're probably right on target. But Apollo wasn't all sunlight and smooth melodies. He had a temper, and he did not handle disrespect well. Just ask Niobe, who made the very poor choice of bragging about having more kids than Apollo's mom, Leto. Or ask Marsyas, who dared to challenge Apollo in a music contest. Spoiler, it did not end well. Basically, Apollo was that mix of chill and don't push me that you see in someone who's used to being exceptional. Apollo's many myths. Apollo appears in more stories than almost any other Olympian. He helped heroes, fought monsters, healed plagues, and sometimes caused plagues if he woke up in a mood. But his most famous myth ties him directly to his role as a prophet and protector, the slaying of Python. Python was a giant serpent that guarded the sacred site of Delphi. Apollo, wanting a place for his oracle, showed up and basically said, "Sorry giant snake, but your era is over." After beating Python, he claimed Delphi as his holy ground, turning it into the spiritual center of Greece. And honestly, no one objected, probably because he had just taken down a massive reptile and looked great doing it. Enter Hermes, the trickster with style. Now let's jump to Hermes, who arrives on the scene basically running, smiling, and probably carrying something he shouldn't. Hermes is the god of travelers, merchants, thieves, luck, messages, and roads. He moves faster than your last good idea, and he's known for being clever, funny, and a little bit chaotic. His origin story already shows who he is. The day he was born, literally the same day, he escaped his cradle, wandered off, stole Apollo's cattle, invented the lyre from a turtle shell, and then pretended he was innocent. This is baby energy on another level. When Apollo found him, Hermes denied everything with the bright eyes of someone who absolutely did everything. In the end, Hermes offered Apollo the new lyre he invented, and Apollo was so impressed he basically said, "Okay fine, you can keep the cows." And just like that, the two gods became friends. It's kind of adorable. Hermes became the messenger of the gods, which is a huge job because the Olympians always had drama to communicate. He carried news between worlds, guided souls to the underworld, and acted as a sort of cosmic mailman, diplomat, and problem-solver rolled into one. When the gods needed someone clever to slip in, negotiate, steal something, or sneak around, Hermes was their guy. Hermes in action. Hermes pops up everywhere in Greek stories. He helps heroes like Perseus by giving him magical tools. He makes deals between gods. He even escorts souls after death, which is a much calmer task than stealing sunlight cattle or talking his way out of trouble. But one thing is consistent across his myths: Hermes is always sharp, always playful, and always faster than anyone trying to keep up with him. Apollo and Hermes, opposites, yet balanced. It's easy to see how Apollo and Hermes play as opposites. Apollo is order, harmony, logic. Hermes is improvisation, movement, mischief. Apollo is the reason the world stays stable, Hermes is the reason the world stays interesting. Yet there's something deeper going on. Even though they clash in personality, their relationship is one of respect. After the cattle incident, Apollo could have turned Hermes into a lightning rod or something. Instead, he laughed, eventually, and accepted Hermes' gift of music. Apollo became the master of the lyre, and Hermes got recognized for his invention and cleverness. Hermes, in turn, often delivers messages for Apollo, helps maintain order, and bridges gaps between gods, mortals, and spirits. Their balance mirrors the Greek idea that the universe needs both structure and flexibility. You need the rulebook Apollo brings, but you also need the problem-solving chaos Hermes brings when the rules don't quite cut it. Even their symbols reflect this. Apollo's lyre is smooth, elegant, and precise. Hermes' staff, the caduceus, is winding, twisting, and full of movement. They're like the two sides of creativity, the disciplined and the spontaneous. Together, they cover the whole spectrum. Why these two matter in the big picture? Apollo and Hermes show something important about Greek myth: the gods weren't perfect beings trapped in one personality. They were forces of the world, both natural and social. Apollo is the sun that rises exactly on time every day, the predictability of seasons, the clarity of truth, the beauty of music that follows rules. Hermes is the wind that shifts suddenly, the message you didn't expect, the clever solution that comes out of nowhere, the laughter that breaks tension. Through them, the Greeks explained everything from poetry to trade routes, from inspiration to negotiation. They help show how the world can be steady and wild at the same time. Closing thoughts. In the end, Apollo and Hermes make a great pair, not because they're similar, but because they aren't. Their myths teach that life needs balance, guidance and creativity, rules and flexibility, wisdom and wit. And honestly, if you ever had to pick two gods to help you survive an adventure, you would want Apollo's clarity and Hermes' quick thinking. One to light the road. One to help you sneak past whatever's waiting on it. Together? Not a bad team at all. Ares, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, conflict, craft, and desire. If Olympus were a reality show, this chapter would be the episode everyone rewatches. You've got war, love, jealousy, metalworking, traps, and enough drama to fuel 3 seasons. At the center of it all stand 3 gods whose domains basically cover the whole spectrum of human chaos: Ares, Hephaestus, and Aphrodite. War, craft, and desire, wild mix, but in Greek myth, they're all tangled together. Let's start with the one most likely to flip a table. Ares, the god of "let's fight about it." Ares is the god of war, but not the noble, strategic kind. He's more like the guy who sees 2 armies lining up and gets excited because things are about to get loud. Ares represents the raw, messy part of battle: bloodlust, rage, confusion, and the thunder of shields smashing together. The Greeks didn't exactly adore Ares. Sure, they respected him because war was a big deal, but they also saw him as kind of dangerous and unpredictable. Heroes didn't usually pray to him unless they were desperate. Even Zeus, king of the gods, wasn't Ares's biggest fan. At one point he basically said, "I only tolerate you because you're my kid." But Ares isn't all chaos. He also symbolizes bravery, strength, and that intense fire that pushes people to defend what they care about. Still, most stories show him losing or getting embarrassed, like that time he fought Athena and she just tossed him around like a rag doll. When Ares shows up, you know action is coming, but also probably some questionable choices. Hephaestus, the master craftsman of Olympus. Now, let's move to a totally different vibe. Hephaestus is the god of fire, metalworking, and all things crafted. If you picture a divine blacksmith with sparks flying around him as he hammers out magic weapons, you've got the right image. He made Zeus's thunderbolts, Achilles' legendary armor, and just about every shiny tool the gods use. His birth story is pretty rough, though. In some versions, Hera had him alone, without Zeus, and wasn't thrilled when he turned out less perfect than she expected. In another version, Zeus threw him off Olympus during an argument. Either way, Hephaestus ended up falling for a very long time. Stories say he landed on an island and hurt his legs so badly he walked with a limp forever after. Despite this, Hephaestus didn't turn bitter. Instead, he worked. He became the best craftsman in the universe. His forge was full of fire, smoke, metal, and a level of creativity none of the other gods could match. He even had automatons, basically early robots made of gold, to help him walk around and run his workshop. Imagine showing up for a shift and seeing glittering robot assistants handling tools. Classic Hephaestus. He represents patience, problem-solving, and the quiet power of creation. He may not be flashy, but every hero in Greek myth owes something to him. Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and, oh no, here comes trouble. And then there's Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and desire. When she appears, things get romantic, dramatic, or both. She's the kind of goddess who just walks by and accidentally starts a whole war. Looking at you, Trojan War. Aphrodite is irresistible, magnetic, and full of charm. She often acts out of passion, emotion, and the kind of impulse that makes people write poetry or make very questionable decisions. She's also tied deeply to the sea in some myths, since she rose from the foam, glowing and perfect. The Olympians admired her but also feared what she could stir up. Love isn't gentle in Greek myth, it hits like a lightning bolt and leaves chaos behind. Aphrodite shows how desire can move armies, break friendships, or create something beautiful. She's not cruel, but she does what she feels, and feelings can be messy. Ares plus Aphrodite, the affair everyone talks about. If Olympus had gossip tabloids, Ares and Aphrodite would be on every cover. Even though Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, she had a long-running affair with Ares. And they weren't subtle. The gods whispered, mortals sang songs about it, and even their kids, like Eros, god of love, showed how tangled their connection was. But here's where the drama hits peak entertainment. Hephaestus found out. And instead of yelling, crying, or throwing a trident, Poseidon style, he did the one thing he does best, he created something. A trap. He forged an invisible, unbreakable net and set it over the bed he shared with Aphrodite. Sure enough, Ares visited her, they lay together, and snap, the net dropped and locked them in place. Hephaestus immediately called the other gods over like, hey, come see this. And yes, the gods laughed. Probably too much. Ares was humiliated, Aphrodite was embarrassed, and Hephaestus proved he was smarter than both of them put together. Afterward, the affair continued anyway, because when it comes to love and desire, logic rarely wins. But the story shows the clash of emotion, passion, and craft in a very human way. The themes: war, creation, love, a beautiful mess. These three gods, when you put them together, create a symbolic triangle that covers almost everything humans feel. Aries represents raw emotion, rage, impulse, the heat of the moment. Hephaestus represents skill and persistence, the slow fire that builds something lasting. Aphrodite represents desire, the spark that starts everything. They're different forces, but in people and myths, they often collide. Love can lead to conflict. Conflict can lead to creativity. Creativity can shape love or heal the wounds left by war. The Greeks understood this, and so they used these gods to show how tangled human emotions really are. Aries and Hephaestus, in particular, reveal the two types of fire inside people, the destructive flame that makes you act without thinking, and the controlled flame that builds, repairs, and transforms. Aphrodite moves between them, showing how desire can pull a person toward chaos or toward creation. Even the affair myth, messy as it is, speaks to something bigger. Love doesn't follow rules, even divine ones. And the people who get hurt by it, like Hephaestus, aren't powerless. They respond in their own way, using the strengths they have. His trap was a way of reclaiming dignity, using craft to outwit brute strength and beauty. Reflection, divine drama, human lessons. Aries, Hephaestus, and Aphrodite may be gods, but their stories feel incredibly human. People fight, create, fall in love, get jealous, make mistakes, forgive or don't forgive. Their interactions on Olympus reflect what happens in houses, families, and hearts every day. In them, the Greeks saw themselves, not perfect, not simple, but full of passion and contradiction. Conflict, craft, and desire. War, creation, and love. Fire that destroys, fire that shapes, and the spark that lights both. Out of this trio, we get some of the oldest, most meaningful stories about what it means to feel deeply. And honestly, it's kind of comforting to know that even the gods couldn't sort it all out. Dionysus, ecstasy, and the divine revels. If the Olympian gods were all invited to a giant party, Dionysus would be the one everyone keeps an eye on, not because he's dangerous, okay, sometimes he is, but because the vibes change the moment he arrives. Drinks appear, people laugh louder, someone starts dancing on a table, and suddenly the whole evening feels like it's drifting somewhere between joy and total chaos. That's Dionysus. God of wine, ecstasy, vegetation, and those mysterious rites that made ancient Greeks feel both free and slightly nervous. Let's take a slow walk into his world, though with Dionysus, even a calm walk might turn into a parade. Dionysus, born twice and born different. Dionysus has one of the most dramatic birth stories in Greek mythology, which is saying a lot, because these gods do not do simple. He's the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Semele. Zeus falls in love with her, classic Zeus move, and Hera, Zeus's wife, gets jealous, also classic Hera move. Hera disguises herself and tricks Semele into asking Zeus to show himself in his true god form. That's a problem because no mortal can handle the full, divine blast mode of Zeus. When Zeus appears in lightning and thunder, Semele is instantly destroyed. But Zeus manages to save the unborn child. He literally sews Dionysus into his thigh and carries him to term. That's right, the god of wine was born from Zeus's leg. If you ever feel like your family has weird stories, just remember this one. Maybe this unusual beginning is why Dionysus has a dual nature. He's joyful, generous, and full of life, but also wild, unpredictable, and capable of bringing madness. Wine is like that, one moment you're laughing, the next you're crying because you remembered a sad song from 5 years ago. The young god on the road. Journeys, followers, and freedom. Unlike the other Olympians who mostly stayed on the mountain, Dionysus spent a lot of time wandering the world. His journeys take him to far-off lands, from Greece to Asia, spreading the knowledge of wine, vegetation, and his sacred rites. And he never travels alone. His followers, called Maenads, are some of the most intense characters in Greek myth. Mostly women, they enter ecstatic, trance-like states during rituals. They dance, sing, shout, and sometimes tear apart wild animals with their bare hands. These aren't gentle cheerleaders, they're the ultimate letting go of everything crowd. Dionysus also rolls with satyrs, centaurs, and all kinds of wild spirits. Basically, if there's a creature with hooves, horns, or the urge to dance around a campfire, they're probably in Dionysus's squad. His travels aren't just road trips, they're transformations. Wherever he goes, he changes things. People loosen up, rules bend, hidden feelings rise to the surface. For some, that's good, for others, it's terrifying. Dionysus brings liberation, but he also tests how much freedom a person can actually handle. Joy and chaos, the dual nature of Dionysus. Wine is a perfect symbol for Dionysus because it's both comforting and dangerous. A cup can bring warmth and laughter. Too much, and suddenly you're telling your life story to a houseplant. Dionysus represents that line between joy and madness, and he's always inviting people to step onto it. In myths, his power can heal and uplift. He brings celebration, music, and release from stress. But when people disrespect him or deny his divinity, things go downhill fast. One famous story is about King Pentheus of Thebes. He tried to ban Dionysus's worship and spy on the Maenads. It did not end well. Dionysus led him into the hills, whipped the Maenads into a frenzy, and they tore Pentheus apart without realizing who he was. It's one of the darkest stories in Greek myth, and it shows that ignoring your own wild, emotional side can lead to disaster. But Dionysus doesn't punish for fun, he punishes because someone refuses to accept the freedom or truth he offers. He's both teacher and troublemaker. The meaning of Dionysus, transformation and release. Every Dionysus myth has layers. On the surface, it's dancing, wine, and celebration. But beneath that is something deeper, transformation. Dionysus helps people unlock parts of themselves they hide during normal life. He takes the stiff, proper parts of society and shakes them until people remember how to feel. That could mean laughing until you can't breathe or crying in a way that finally releases something you've carried for years. His rites were secretive and powerful. People believed they could experience true freedom by losing themselves, even for a moment. Letting go of control wasn't seen as weakness, it was a doorway into understanding life's deeper mysteries. Dionysus stands for the idea that every person needs moments of release. Too much order makes the heart heavy. Too much chaos breaks it. Balance sits somewhere in the middle, where you can dance a little, dream a little, and reconnect with your own emotions. He invites people to see that life isn't just rules and routines, it's also passion, imagination, and wild joy. The boundary between order and madness. Dionysus walks a thin line between the sane and the surreal. His myths remind us that the boundary between order and madness is fragile. A single spark, joy, grief, anger, a little too much wine, can push someone to a different state of mind. But instead of fearing that boundary, Dionysus encourages people to explore it safely, to face the emotional storms they usually avoid. He's the god who says, you don't have to be in control all the time. It's okay to feel everything. Ancient Greeks saw this as essential. Without Dionysus, society would be stiff, cold, and brittle. With him, it breathes. And yes, sometimes it dances barefoot in the woods. Dionysus as a bridge, mortal and divine, life and beyond. Dionysus is unusual among the Olympians because he's half-mortal. That makes him a bridge between two worlds. He understands human suffering, human pleasure, human confusion. He doesn't sit above mortals, he walks among them. He also connects life with the other world. Because of his ties to vegetation and nature, Dionysus is linked to the cycle of growth, decay, and rebirth. Grapevines wither in winter and burst back in spring. Wine itself is made from crushed fruit, life turned into something new. Even in death myths, Dionysus has a presence. He represents the soul's ability to break free, to change shape, to find joy beyond fear. He isn't the god of death, but he looks into both worlds and understands them. In many ways, he's the most human of the gods. And that's why his stories feel so close. Reflection: the god who frees the heart. Dionysus isn't just about partying, he's about emotional truth. The Greeks knew that people need space to laugh, cry, dance, dream, and sometimes fall apart. Dionysus gives permission for all of that. He brings ecstasy, yes. But he also brings honesty. He shows that transformation is part of life. That joy can rise out of grief. That madness is never far from reason. And that sometimes, the best thing you can do is let go, for a moment, and breathe. He's the god who frees the heart, even when the world feels heavy. And that is why Dionysus will always have a place not just in myth, but in the parts of us that crave joy, mystery, and connection. Other myths and legacies, heroes, mortals, and the enduring power of the gods. As we reach the final chapter of our mythic bedtime journey, it's time to step back from Olympus itself and look at how the gods deal with the world below, the humans, the heroes, and everyone just trying to survive the chaos of ancient Greece. Because while the gods love to fight, fall in love, and cause drama among themselves, they're even more involved in the lives of mortals. Think of them as the ultimate helicopter parents, except instead of giving advice, they usually throw lightning, send monsters, or bless someone with super strength because they feel like it. Let's walk through how the gods influence hero stories, why mortals keep getting caught in divine arguments, and how these myths still live inside our movies, books, and everyday thinking today. Gods and mortals, a complicated relationship. The Greek gods are powerful, dramatic, and honestly kind of unpredictable. Mortals, on the other hand, are fragile, emotional, and constantly running into trouble. Naturally, this combination leads to interesting relationships. Sometimes the gods help humans. Sometimes they test them. Sometimes they turn them into animals. Sometimes they fall in love with them and create heroes. There's no clear system, just vibes. But in almost every myth, the gods shape human destiny. They lift some people up and push others into challenges that look impossible. And through those challenges, heroes emerge. Which brings us to one of the most famous figures of all, Heracles. Heracles and the labors, when the gods give you problems and solutions. Heracles is one of the best examples of mortal and divine interaction. He's a demigod, son of Zeus and a mortal woman. Yes, Zeus did this a lot. Hercules is his Roman name, Heracles is the Greek one. From birth, his life is shaped by the gods. Hera is furious at Zeus, again, so she targets the baby. Even as an infant, Heracles shows his strength by strangling 2 snakes she sends. Talk about a dramatic start. But the real story is the 12 labors, a list of challenges given as punishment after Hera drives him into a state of madness. When he recovers, he's heartbroken over what he's done, so he accepts a series of impossible tasks. Many of these labors involve gods helping or blocking him. Athena gives advice, Apollo directs him, and sometimes Hera tries to sabotage him just for fun. Through these trials, the Nemean lion, the Hydra, the horses of Diomedes, the golden apples, and more, Heracles becomes a symbol of endurance and strength. The interesting part? Even though the gods toss him into danger, their involvement also helps him rise. It's messy parenting, but it produces the greatest hero in Greek mythology. More heroes, more divine drama. Heracles isn't the only hero shaped by the gods. The Greek world is full of legendary figures who owe part of their story to a deity's interference. Perseus gets magical items from the gods to defeat Medusa. Theseus is helped by Poseidon and admired by Athena when he faces the Minotaur. Achilles is dipped in the river Styx, becoming almost invincible through divine magic. Odysseus spends 10 years lost at sea because Poseidon is mad at him, but Athena keeps stepping in like a cosmic big sister. Every hero story feels like a group project between the gods and the mortals, some helping, some messing things up, all creating tales that lasted thousands of years. Rituals, oracles, and the human need for meaning. The gods weren't just characters in stories. For ancient Greeks, they were part of everyday life. If something strange happened, lightning, a drought, a surprising victory, the gods were the first explanation. To stay in favor with these unpredictable divine beings, people practiced rituals and sacrifices. They offered animals, wine, food, or even small statues. The idea was simple: hey gods, please notice us, please be nice, please don't send monsters. One of the most famous ways humans communicated with the gods was through oracles. The Oracle of Delphi, dedicated to Apollo, was basically the ancient world's most respected advice center. Leaders, generals, and everyday people came to ask questions. The priestess would enter a trance and speak Apollo's messages. The answers were usually mysterious, but everyone believed them deeply. There were also local cults, festivals, dramas, and celebrations dedicated to the gods. Worship wasn't only serious, it was social, fun, and creative. Greek religion wasn't about a strict rulebook. It was about a living relationship with forces bigger than yourself. Art, literature, and the cultural legacy. You don't need to scroll far in today's world to see the fingerprints of Greek mythology. These stories are everywhere, in paintings, statues, movies, books, video games, brand logos, and even city names. The Greeks themselves filled their temples and pottery with scenes of gods and heroes. Later writers, Homer, Hesiod, and many others, turned the myths into epic poems and stories that still inspire modern storytelling. Today, we still reference Greek myths without even thinking about it. We call tough challenges Herculean. We talk about a person's Achilles heel. We use words like Titanic, Muse, Panic, Narcissist, all rooted in myth. Modern stories borrow from them too. Superheroes, fantasy worlds, tragic dramas, all follow patterns that the Greeks shaped long ago. Even the idea of a hero's journey, something used in movies and novels everywhere, comes from these ancient tales. The gods may not be worshipped the same way anymore, but they still live in our culture, our imagination, and our language. Why these myths still matter? So why do we keep reading these stories? Why do they still feel alive? It's because Greek mythology isn't just entertainment, it's a mirror. And sometimes, it's an emotional mirror that shows the parts of being human we don't always look at directly. These myths show our struggles. Courage and fear. Love and jealousy. Pride and humility. Strength and weakness. Hope and despair. The gods are exaggerated versions of us. They make huge mistakes, feel huge emotions, and deal with huge consequences. Through them, ancient people explored everything from family conflict to grief to ambition. And the heroes? They show what it means to rise after falling. To try again. To accept help. To keep going even when the gods themselves seem against you. Psychologists today still use myths as tools to understand the human mind. Writers use them to explore symbols and meaning. Teachers use them to inspire curiosity. Even bedtime storytellers, like you and the channel you're building, use them to calm the world for a moment while also reminding us of something deeper. Myths hold ancient wisdom, but they also hold comfort. They remind us that humans have always struggled, dreamed, feared, laughed, and loved. We're not alone in our questions. The enduring light of the old gods. Even though the temples are ruins now and the rituals are gone, the Greek gods haven't vanished. They've changed shape, just like their stories always did. They live on in art, stories, and thoughts. They live in the symbols we still use and the stories we still tell. Whether it's Zeus with his thunderbolts, Athena with her wisdom, Dionysus with his wild freedom, or Heracles with his strength, these characters continue to inspire us. Myth is memory. Myth is imagination. Myth is a gift passed from one generation to the next. And tonight, as we close this chapter, maybe the old gods smile a little, knowing their stories are still alive, spoken softly, shared gently, lighting up the dark in their own ancient way. The mythic sleep, resting among the stars. So here we are, at the very end of our mythy bedtime journey. The gods have argued, loved, fought, sulked, transformed, and occasionally behaved like responsible cosmic adults, but now even they grow quiet. Night settles over Olympus, the winds calm down, and the world softens, like someone dimmed the lights on creation itself. It's the perfect moment to remember that even though the stories feel huge and loud, they were always meant to end on a peaceful note. Because myths aren't just about battles and chaos, they're also about rest. Ancient storytellers told them at night too, under soft firelight, with the stars spreading above them like a cosmic blanket. And in those stars lived more stories. One of the sweetest ideas the Greeks had was katasterism, the belief that gods or mortals could be transformed into stars. It's basically the deluxe immortal package. You're done with your drama on Earth, so the universe picks you up and places you in the sky like, congrats, you now shine forever. In a way, it was the ancient version of becoming a constellation influencer. A perfect example is the story of the Pleiades, 7 sisters who were daughters of Atlas. These sisters were beautiful, kind, and very tired of being chased around by Orion, the giant hunter who never seemed to understand the word no. To protect them, Zeus did what Zeus always does when the plot gets tense: he transformed them. This time, though, he actually made a gentle choice. He placed the sisters in the sky, turning them into a small glowing cluster you can still spot on clear nights. The Pleiades sparkle softly, a tiny bunch of lights that look like a celestial campfire. People throughout history have used them to mark seasons, tell stories, and guide traveling ships. They remind us that even when the world feels too loud, there's beauty tucked into the dark. And their myth fits perfectly with our ending here, because it's about finding peace after chaos, safety after fear, and a home among the stars after running through too many troubles. This idea, stories becoming stars, feels like a gentle promise. Myths don't really end. They don't fade out just because the storyteller stops talking. They drift upward, into dreams, memories, jokes, drawings, movies, bedtime thoughts. They become part of the sky inside us. And even though these tales are thousands of years old, they still glow with the same strange warmth they had back then. We may not pray to Zeus before thunderstorms anymore, and most of us haven't wrestled a hydra lately, hopefully, but the spirit of these myths stays alive in the way we imagine heroes, the way we picture courage, and the way we look up at the stars and wonder what's out there. Myths stretch across time like constellations, shapes formed by human eyes and human hearts. They remind us that people long ago were just like us, curious, hopeful, scared, amazed, and trying to make sense of the world. So, as the night deepens and the sky settles into its quiet glitter, think of the gods drifting off too. Zeus snores like distant thunder. Athena reads by lamplight. Hermes dreams of new paths. Dionysus probably fell asleep halfway through a story he was telling. And somewhere above them all, the Pleiades shine like soft lanterns guiding anyone who looks up. Their light is old. Their myths are older. But they still sparkle, still whisper, still call. And now, as we close this journey, maybe let their glow carry you into your own dreams, because stories never really sleep. They just rest among the stars, waiting for the next night someone needs them.